Hello and welcome to the Shankly Gates podcast. This evening I'm joined by Dan, only two of us this evening, but I'm sure we'll make up for it. Dan, how are you doing?
Yes, I'm all good, mate. Yeah, pleasure to be along. And like you say, it only takes us two. That's why we're
Not
here,
wrong.
mate. We'll box this, no dramas.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about the Southampton game yesterday, looking at the Porto game midweek and the Champions League run that we've been on, and also looking forward to the small matter, not really a crucial game ahead in terms of the Merseyside derby, which I'm sure both of us are quite excited for, but at the same time worrying about as well.
Yeah.
So first we'll start with the Southampton game. 3:00 kickoff yesterday. Rarely with 3:00 kickoffs, and normally we can struggle when it's a 3:00 kickoff, but straight into the blocks. Within about 2 minutes, we'd scored. So what were your overall thoughts on the game?
Yeah, obviously made up. Funnily enough, I actually predicted, and there is proof of this, a 4-0 victory. And I actually cited in that an early goal would be the key. So when I seen we'd gone, watch us go 1-0 up through Jota, I was delighted. Yeah, Southampton didn't offer a great deal, if we're going to be brutally honest. They were a bit toothless, especially when you consider we did actually give them opportunities, whether that was through our own complacency or just mistakes in the game. We did hand them chances to get ours. And Alisson, a lot of the plaudits have been for Alisson. So that tells you sort of maybe 4-0 was a bit flattering. We certainly deserved 4 goals, but there's a chance Southampton probably should have scored as well. But listen, like you say, any game can be difficult, can't it? But we seem to be making a habit of making Anfield a fortress again, which obviously it wasn't for a long time last season. So, yeah, good result, comfortable. And another one of them games whereby we seem to be able to relax and take our foot off the gas a little bit, which in-game management like that could be really important, because I know we're going to talk about rotation moving forwards. But if we can almost play it 60, 70% during a game when it's won, then that bodes really well for the season.
Well, you've mentioned that it was a sort of routine win, but I think if there's anyone that made it look as easy, it was Diogo Jota. First of all, let's talk about his performance yesterday. For me, I genuinely can't believe how good he's been since he's come to us. Like, I think most Liverpool fans, when we saw that, considering who we were linked with at the time, and just seeing Diogo Jota signing overnight for the price that we paid as well, it was like, are you sure? Like, he's come from Wolves. We didn't know whether he was going to step up, and ever since then, he's been a revelation. And yesterday, he pretty much proved that, don't you think?
Yeah, he did 100%. And he's been proving it ever since he signed, like you sort of alluded to there, because I don't think anyone really, hindsight's a wonderful thing. And if a Liverpool fan was to turn around and say, oh, I expected him to be a massive hit, I think they'd be lying. Because I don't think anyone, myself included, expected him to come in and, almost force his way into the front three. For me, he still isn't in the first choice front three. It's still Firmino, in my opinion. But listen, he's banging on the door, isn't he? And he's a very different type of player, obviously. His numbers are always going to be better than Firmino's. He pops up, he's an impact player, and he seems to just be in the right place at the right time. He's got that knack, hasn't he, as a striker? And yeah, he's been superb. And like you say, paid a lot of money for him, don't get me wrong, but we still paid a lot of money for him. Me thinking sort of, will replace Mane in cup games and will come on for Mane in 60 minutes and stuff. But he hasn't done that. He's been a lot more than that. And he's proven to be an incredible piece of business, considering we weren't linked with him. We were linked with Ismail Assar in particular at the time. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we just signed Jota. And what a piece. It's up there with Michael Edwards' best piece of business, in my opinion, because we'd seen him play for Wolves and we all thought, yeah, okay, he's decent. But they seen something at the club that nobody else could possibly see, because he's been outstanding.
But before we go ahead, I think Jack's got a lovely comment for you, just talking about how lovely your setup is. And we can't sort of ignore it. We've mentioned it quite a bit, but it is a great Liverpool setup in the background you've got.
It is, mate. Yeah, I appreciate that, Jack. And if I'm honest, this probably isn't even the best angle. Like, when models say it's not my best. What I'm looking at is arguably better than what's behind me. One day I'll turn it all around for us. Yeah, I'll flip it all around. I'll flip myself around, might be easier. And we'll see the whole room one day. But yeah, nice one.
Switch it up. Just going back to Jota, I think the big thing, especially going into January now, knowing that we're going to lose the likes of Mane and Salah because of the AFCON, How important do you think, knowing that we've got Michael Edwards, who's a master, an absolute master at doing business like this, how important do you think it is that we have someone with experience in sort of getting deals over the line in that fashion almost, and bringing in a player that can, provide an impact straight away as well as being, big for the future as well?
Yeah, it's that under the radar element, isn't it, that Liverpool have been so good at, really. It's very
Yeah,
rare, a transfer. Probably Thiago is one of the only ones that
yeah,
everyone kind of knew was going to happen eventually, in recent years anyway. So I do hope that Edwards and the club have got something lined up for January, because you mentioned AFCON, and if
yeah,
it goes ahead at this rate, obviously with present sort of situation going
yeah,
on. But if we do lose Mane and Salah, I don't think our squad, as good as Jota is, as good as Firmino is, as handy as Minamino can be, I think we need one early January. I do, and I'll stand by that. I think we need to sign in, and I hope, like you said, that Edwards has got something almost up his sleeve early January. There's been a few names linked. It's often not the people we link with that we sign, like we've seen with
yeah,
the Jota one. But like you say, it could be really important having someone with the capabilities to pluck someone almost out of thin air, and they come in and make an instant impact on this side, because that's what we're going to need. Because if I'm right, I think it's Brentford and Crystal Palace and
yeah.
possibly Chelsea that they'll miss. And like I've said, no game, Brentford have certainly showed that no game in the Premier League's easy. So I think we will need a sign-in, and I hope we do get one. And listen, we're not going to go out and spend crazy money in January. Let's get it right. So if we can find another 20, 30 million pound player that can come in and obviously offer something for January, but also
Yeah.
offer something moving forwards, because again, this whole Origi situation is going to rear its head either in January or the summer. We are going to need a long-term replacement somewhere along the line for him. So why not sign him in January when we need it most?
Well, Jack's suggestion here is Nkunku from Leipzig. I know we've done a bit of business with
We
Leipzig
have, yeah.
before. We have. Um, January, do you reckon, or maybe in the summer if it was going to go ahead?
I mean, the problem is most clubs, Leipzig included, would like to wait until the summer, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
Certainly to lose the best players. Like nobody wants to lose the best player in January. Let's get
no,
it right. At the same time, clubs like Leipzig and clubs in the continent more generally often have release clauses that come into
yeah,
play. We've seen that with Canate from Leipzig. So if that's in play, maybe with him or someone similar,
mm,
then Liverpool should be looking at that. And in fairness to the club, they are very good at picking those deals out and
yeah,
picking the players who we can go and get. And Nkunku could be another one of them, because if we can go and pay a release clause for someone and take them off the hands, and we did it with Minamino as well. Let's not
yeah,
forget, from another RB side from
hmm,
Salzburg, he had a 7.5 million release clause, which was nothing really. So if we can do
yeah.
something similar, I would be made up.
I think as a player as well, Nkunku can play out wide. He can play in midfield. I think it'd be a great sort of versatility player if we could get someone like that. I think the big thing is getting a player that can play in multiple positions, like we've seen with Jota. He can play
Yeah.
left wing and he can play through the middle. It would be nice to have a player that can play on both flanks, or even play through the middle as well. And I think that's a big thing for Liverpool, especially going forward. Is if we're going to have players, they need to be able to play in multiple positions. And I think we've seen that this season as well.
Yeah.
Players filling in other positions.
The thing with that is as well, it makes it an easier sell to the player, because,
Yeah.
for instance, if you're a right winger and
Mhm.
that's pretty much the only place you play, how
Yeah.
do you bring that player to? It's like Rafinha now. We're linking Rafinha all the time. How
Yeah.
do we sell coming to Liverpool for Rafinha? He is a
Yeah.
right winger pretty much by trade, and that's it. And
Yeah.
Mohamed Salah plays there. So what's it? Oh yeah, by the way, you might play the Carabao Cup and the FA Cup, and if
Yeah.
Salah needs a 20-minute rest, you've got to get it. That doesn't work. But if you're a versatility player that can play across the front line and even in midfield, like a Jota can,
Mhm.
then it's a much easier sell for the club, because Klopp and whoever else can say, well, you can play X, Y, Z. Mane needs a rest, you play. Salah needs a rest. It's just such an easier deal to do for the club.
Well, we've mentioned Jota first of all as a standout player from yesterday. Was there anybody else that caught your eye? I think for me it was definitely Allison.
Alisson, yeah, obviously, I think he just proved again, didn't he? Sort of his one-on-one ability. For
Yeah.
me, he's the best in the world at that. I'm not going to spark the who's the best goalkeeper in the world debate right
Yeah.
now. But I think actually some of the best keepers in the world at the minute have their own sort of trait that they are the best at. And for me,
Yeah,
Alisson one-on-one is the best. I think Ederson at City is probably the best with his feet.
yeah,
David De Gea is probably the best at saving with his feet,
yeah,
if we're going to be honest. But Alisson's positioning and how he deals with one-on-ones is just outstanding. And he proved it again yesterday. For me, it'd be Robertson
yeah,
would be my standout, to be honest, because he's come under fire recently, including from myself. I've been quite critical of him because I don't think he's been playing anywhere near the level at the start of the season that we expect from him.
yeah.
I think he's been good
Hmm.
without being, world class like he usually is. And Trent has been outstanding, so it's kind
Hmm.
of been a bit lopsided. Like Trent's looked incredible every game. I mean, the Man
Yeah,
United game was a big one for me. Obviously, we hammered them,
yeah,
but Robertson was again. He didn't really
mm,
do anything. He didn't do anything. That's really harsh. He didn't stand out even in that
yeah.
performance. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I was calling for Simicast to play, and I have been for a few weeks.
Same.
And I
Yeah,
don't think it's necessarily criticism of Robertson. I think it's Simicast has deserved to play because I think
yeah,
he's been brilliant. But
definitely.
listen, so Robertson came on against Porto and looked like a player with a point to prove, didn't he? He looked
Yeah,
like a man
he
possessed.
did.
And he carried that on yesterday. I thought he was man of the match. Obviously, gets the assist early.
Mm.
Unlucky not to have one or two more assists, including one for Jota. Um, if that's how he is when he's angry and he's got competition for his spot, then let's keep him like that because he's absolutely top draw.
I think Robertson was definitely outstanding yesterday. I think as well, Fabinho showed as well how important he is to that midfield. I think
Yeah.
just watching him just sweep up, interceptions. That one with Adam Armstrong,
Mm-hmm.
I just thought he was going to get absolutely blitzed here, and all of a sudden he's managed to put a recovery challenge. A bit slow. He should have got there much faster, but I think he did a good job. And he pulls out that spin in the middle of the park as well. I thought, you know what, that's a real player there. And I think especially after last season, seeing him play at centre half and then transitioning back into midfield, it just shows how important he is in that midfield. And when we've got Thiago and Hendo almost having the license to roam then and just, be creative like Thiago was, in the Porto game and yesterday as well, I think it really adds quite a bit to the team. I think the next thing that's quite important to mention is the fact that we have been on fire recently. I think
Mm-hmm.
after you could probably exclude the West Ham game, but even then we played some decent football. I think we've been on good form since the international break as well. But the only issue is there's 2, 3 other teams around us that are also playing in good form
Yeah.
and picking up points. Obviously, Chelsea dropped points today. City beat West Ham as well. But how important do you think it is, first of all, keeping up pace and make sure that we win games and it might come down to goal difference, knowing that
Mm-hmm.
the potency of the two other teams that we've got, but also keeping up the momentum in terms of the derby next week. And we've seen Everton lose today as well, and probably, maybe with a bit more to prove and a bit more hunger in them. How important do you think it is then to keep that up and keep going forward as well?
Yeah, it's massive. We can't afford to lose pace with City and Chelsea. Let's not beat around the bush. I mean, I know we're only 13 games in, but
Yeah,
this already looks like a 3-horse race for the title, doesn't it?
yeah,
I think everyone, every sort of Premier League fan in the country would admit that right now. Three very good sides. Let's not let's get it right. Three sides who are playing with Premier League title winning form at the minute. So in recent seasons, there's only really been, there was us on our own once when we won it playing Premier League title winning form. There was
yeah,
us and City previously. There was just City last season. This year, it looks like there's three sides who are all good enough to go and win it. So it's really important we maintain with them. And it looked for a second when we got beat by West Ham, we might fall off, but we've come back really strong. And obviously Chelsea dropped points today, which is great. Even though it was against United, it was one
yeah,
of the few times that we all wanted United to get something. Because they're not massively a threat, if we're going to be
no,
honest. They're probably too far off the pace already. Yeah, in terms of momentum going into the derby, that's always nice. I despise the derby, just like I despise playing Man United.
yeah,
There's 4 weeks in the season where I'll sit here and say it doesn't really matter how we're playing, in
hmm,
my opinion. It should, like I said earlier on Twitter, like form should. And I think Klopp's tried to play down the derby effect already
yeah,
yesterday a little bit, to say it's just another game. It's just we don't look at it like you look at it, which is brilliant. I hope they
hmm,
don't, because if they look at it like I look at it, we're in trouble.
yeah,
because I just can't stand it. But you are right to mention it. Like, we are flying, scoring goals for fun. I think it's 17 times we've scored 2 or more goals or something crazy. I know you want to talk about the playing style in a minute. But it's an interesting point in terms of our rivals, because I think there's 3 very, very good and very different sides going for this Premier League. City suffocate teams and they just dominate games, and they end up scoring not necessarily bags full of goals, but 1 or 2, and they just hurt teams. We are blowing teams away most weeks at the minute, and Chelsea are just so solid defensively. I know they scored 7 against Norwich, but Norwich were a mess at the time. Chelsea are just so solid, and they might nick 1 or 2 potentially and win the game. They haven't done that today, obviously. So it's a really interesting battle for the title for lots of reasons. But like I say, in terms of the derby, we're on an upward trajectory, and they're the opposite. It's quite toxic there at the minute. I don't know if you've seen sort of social media in the aftermath, and obviously the Benitez situation is also not panning out too well. It's an interesting one in terms of that as well, because if he's still in the role on Wednesday, a heavy defeat or even a defeat in the derby, Liverpool could be signing his P45 papers on Wednesday night.
Well, we've mentioned the derby. We'll touch on that a little later on as well in a bit more detail. But we also talked about the play style there. I'm quite interested this season. I think last season, towards the end of it, we mentioned quite a lot. There were big sort of warning signs in our play style and the way that we played. I think the big 3 for me were negative passing and passing way too slow, or passing backwards, sideways when there's ways to go forward. I think not taking enough shots was another one, getting in opportunities, trying to almost walk the ball into the back of the net. And I think the other one was being clinical. And I think this season so far that the 3 of my issues personally have been addressed. I think the way that we pass the ball, 1 touch, 2 touch has been, really nice. I think having Thiago in that midfield, and I think as well, the fullbacks have played quite nicely in terms of being a bit more central, I'd say, and being able to create a bit more from the middle of the park. And shots-wise, I'm sure we're top of the charts in terms of most shots taken, which is quite rare for us. Normally, we're sort of reluctant to shoot. And clinically, we've seen the amount of goals that we've scored as well. I just want to get your thoughts on it, whether you think that we played a bit differently this season and sort of the impact that that's had on us as well.
Yeah, just to say, I think you're dead right about the fullbacks, by the way. Certainly Trent. Trent's popping up in midfield. And I know there's the whole conversation about him becoming a midfielder, but he's popping up in there time and time again this season and starting play from there. And he's an absolute genius at it, so that's fine. We're top of quite a few charts as well. I've seen today in the Premier League. It's quite scary, actually. I think the top 3 goal scorers all come from our front 3 on Saturday, which is phenomenal in itself. I do think we've changed style slightly. I think in a funny way. So when Jurgen Klopp first came in, it was very heavy metal football, scare him. We never quite felt like we'd killed the game off. I remember being at a few games, Bournemouth at home, 2-0 up. We drew 2-2. Norwich away, that mad 5-4 game where Lallana scores. And it's just, there's a few of them. And Klopp obviously worked out that wasn't going to win your titles. It wasn't going to win your trophies. So he gained a lot more control in games by some signings and by a change of style. And I think the league, the year we won the league, we were very dominant and we controlled matches. And when we went 1-0 up, we just killed games, really. And 2-0, and we just killed it. Didn't give them a sniff. And that was great. This year, it's a bit of a throwback to those early days without the danger, possibly, because we've got better individuals now. But we're definitely giving the opposition a sniff. I think we even did that yesterday to some extent. I mean, if you look at the Brentford game probably highlights it, in my opinion, because that was a mad game of football. And we've been involved in a few thrillers this year already. And the year we won the league, we weren't. We were getting up in games and we were just killing them. And we weren't giving the team the ball, let alone chance to score. But this year, it's very attacking. It's very free scoring. It's very free flowing. And I think there is an onus on being more creative, probably about what you spoke about there in terms of last season. We did struggle and it was a little bit one pace, certainly at home when we went on that horrendous run. So maybe it is a bit of a positive hangover, if you like, from that in terms of we want to be more attacking and we've got all this flair. So let's go and use it. But it is leaving us a little bit open/vulnerable at the back, in my opinion. I would like to see the balance slightly return because we are giving away too many chances. We're talking about Alisson too often,
Yeah.
which, as great as he is and as much as I love him and he's a good-looking fella, we're coming out of games and we're coming away saying Alisson was good, wasn't he? That save, this save. And the year we won the league, we didn't really have to do that. You could probably count on one hand the amount of games where he was outstanding. But this season, you can probably do that already. Like City, I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was brilliant yesterday. We've been beat by West Ham in a 5-goal thriller. Stuff like that wasn't happening, and it is. Listen, if we go and win the league playing this football, happy days, you know what I mean? But right now, the thing that might stop us winning the league is playing these open games and giving the opposition chances. And, it's really difficult to win a league playing that way, in my opinion. If we prove us wrong, happy days. But I do fear that we are being a little bit too expansive and open in most games.
We've touched on it there, sort of the comparison to the title-winning season. I think as well, maybe, as you mentioned before, the play styles of the two other teams around us. I think that the season that we won it, like you mentioned, City suffocating teams this season and Chelsea being defensively strong. That was us in that title-winning season. And I think that heavy metal football and the way that we're playing now was City. The goals, the games that they were coming out with 6-1s, 5-0s, games like that. But do you think, which style do you think works most beneficially? Obviously, you could say that the one that won us the title is the best one. But at the same time, City won 3 or 4 titles playing that way. And we've seen the heavy metal games against us, the 4-3s. They lost games like that, but they still came out on top. So which one do you think is actually beneficial in terms of winning the title, especially this season?
See, for me, it would be the more controlled and killing games off sort of approach. It would. And we never seemed to panic in those games in that season either. I remember countless times it was 1-1 going into the last 10 minutes, 0-0 going into, and it was still very controlled, very measured. Went through our phases, went through our disciplines, and we'd find a way. This year, it's not like that. It's we hit them hard, we hit them fast, and we run away with the game, or it's this mad basketball match. And I just fear how many basketball matches you can be involved in and come out on the right side of. You know what I mean? That's my main concern this season. And the other point to mention there is we've got this firepower that's incredible. I've mentioned the top 3 goal scorers in the Premier League. But City they haven't got as good, but they've got the depth, haven't they? Like you mentioned, they were doing that to teams, but once they've tried that for an hour, they can bring off 3 more world-class forwards. That's the difference. So we can't do that. And injuries will have the effect. And that's why I mentioned earlier with the Southampton game, it looked like for a large portion of that game, certainly second half, we were sort of playing at 60%. And if we can do that in-game and control our in-game management and almost give people half a rest while the game's going on, that could be really important for what looks like a difficult season.
I think, again, like you said, City's squad depth and how good that is. I think this season, rotation-wise, I think we've worked quite well personally. I think we've had quite a few injuries already, which we discussed quite a bit over the summer and towards the back end of last season, how crucial, sort of having big injuries like that and whether our squad would be big enough to cope. And so far, they've seemed to have, put up with the challenge. The likes of Ox has come through and played spectacularly. Tyler Morton coming through and playing quite a few games as well, sort of getting up to speed. Keita, obviously, he's gone off injured now,
good,
but
he should be back soon.
But he was immense, and players like Costas as well. Do you think that that's encouraging, especially considering we don't have this multi-million-pound bench that the likes of City or Chelsea or even Man United or the big teams around us do? Or do you think it sort of means that we need to definitely spend a bit more money going forward as well, especially in January?
Yeah, like I said earlier on, I do think we need the extra forward in January. I think that should be to cover the AFCON players. Also, a long-term replacement for Origi, if I'm honest. But on what's going on right now, I do think the lads that are coming in, even Origi including that, he's having an impact in games. I thought he was okay when he came on against Porto. Quite direct. Minamino, we saw him score his first touch of the week.
Yeah.
You mentioned Oxlade-Chamberlain, Tyler
Mhm.
Morton. I've been so impressed with. He's been brilliant. I'd like to think we'd have Harvey Elliott back at some point in the not too
Yeah.
distant future. I know sort of the prognosis from the club is to take your time and not
Yeah.
get too carried away, but it might just be my eyes, but that lad's running on grass. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like, he can't be a million miles away, in my
No.
opinion. But yeah, the one game where I do think injuries hurt us this season was Brighton at home.
Yeah.
I thought Brighton were really good in the game, take nothing away from them whatsoever. But when Keita went off and
Yeah.
we were left with Curtis Jones and Oxlade-Chamberlain either side
Mhm.
of Henderson, that was exposed. That was
Yeah.
exposed badly. And it wasn't a criticism of any one of them three.
Mhm.
It was just as a three that didn't work at all. Like,
Yeah.
I thought our perfect midfield played yesterday, Thiago,
Yeah.
Fabinho and Henderson. That is the opposite of our perfect midfield,
Mhm.
Jones and Oxlade. They both want to do the same thing. They all want to go and get the ball, in fact. They all
Yeah.
want to run and be involved. And you can't all do that because Brighton, to their credit, just picked us apart that day.
Yeah.
So that's probably the thing with the injuries is we have to be lucky because even though we lose a few players and we've still got
Mhm.
lads coming in doing the job, the balance still has to be there.
Yeah.
And for the most part, it has been. So we've been relatively lucky in that respect.
Yeah.
And we, like I said, we have got players coming back now. So the injury front's looking okay. And just to finish on rotation,
Mhm.
the centre backs are rotating really nicely as well. I
Yeah.
think Canate's coming in and giving Matip a rest, which is important.
Mhm.
But also the Simicast and Robertson situation
Yeah.
is one that's going to develop really well, I think.
Yeah.
And it looks like we've got two very good left backs there
Mhm.
who both want to push each other, which can only mean good things.
Well, we saw Costas midweek as well, Porto. We also saw Nico Williams as well at right back. What did you make of the Porto sort of lineup? I was quite shocked personally to see the lineup that he put out, considering that we'd already qualified and knowing that we are going into the Christmas period where it's just rock and roll, almost
Yeah.
football every single week. And especially considering we had the Southampton game on the weekend and then the derby the week after. Were you as shocked as I was to see that he's put our predominant front three on there and sort of our first choice midfield as well?
Yeah, I was shocked it was so short. Well, you know what? That's a lie. I'll take that back. I was disappointed is not the word either. I was surprised that he
Yeah.
did go so strong, but
Mhm.
it didn't shock me because he'd kind of already said it. And
Yeah.
it did feel a bit like because he'd been asked so much about rotating,
Mhm.
and even the Diogo Jota injury last year against FC Midtjylland,
Mhm.
it felt like he was going to name a strong team to kind of back up his own word. I'm not
Yeah.
suggesting that's the only reason he did it, but it did always feel like that. So when I seen the team, yeah, I think it was stronger than I certainly would have picked.
Yeah.
I don't think Mane would have been anywhere near my side. Salah's a really interesting one. You mentioned the front three because
Yeah.
in an ideal world, he'd be nowhere near that game,
Yeah.
obviously. But he smacks me as the kind of player that just loves. He obviously loves scoring goals. We know that,
Yeah.
and he wants to score as many goals as
Mhm.
humanly possible. But I just think he just loves playing. I think
Yeah.
a rest is almost the worst possible thing for him.
Yeah.
Like he just wants to be out there, and if you said to him, "Oh, you're not going to play against Porto," that'd probably have a negative effect on him. So
Yeah.
Klopp would probably know that, and he'll probably think, "I'll play him. I'll play him for an hour, and then I'll
Mhm.
take him off." He scored. He got taken off like immediately after he scored.
Yeah.
Whether that was pre-planned or not, I don't know. But yeah, so it was a surprise in terms of him, but at the same time, like I say, but he wants to be there. And the biggest surprise for me was Allison.
Mhm.
I didn't understand that
No,
because
I didn't
Kelleher
get
and
that
Adrian were
either.
both on the bench. That just
Yeah.
felt like Kelleher all day.
Mhm.
The only reason I've kind of give it in the aftermath was that he captained the side, Allison.
Yeah.
So maybe there was, a want to give him the
Mhm.
captaincy. Maybe they wanted his leadership. Maybe
Mhm.
they just thought it was a nice touch to let him captain. Because what happened last year with his dad, unfortunately, and
Mhm.
obviously scores that goal. It felt like a perfect opportunity for him to captain
Yeah.
the team. But in terms of him playing, that just felt weird to me. But listen, we've also 100% in the group now, and we
Mhm.
could create a bit of history by going all the way through. So
Yeah.
that'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Well, we saw the strong team. So then, did the performance sort of shock you almost? It was, if anything, it was more like a sort of routine win, like we were accustomed to in the title winning season.
Yeah, it was. I thought the first half was really disjointed. Even though the
Yeah.
team was strong, it's probably a team that's never played together, and it definitely looked like that first half. It was really disjointed. It was really no one quite knew where the other one was running. It was
Yeah.
strange. It's not what you're used to from the Liverpool side.
And we
But
gave
yeah, I
chances
suppose
away, like you mentioned.
did give chances away again,
Yeah.
and Canate was probably culpable for a few of
hmm
those. I really like Canate. I think he's got all the attributes and all the facets to be a
hmm
top class centre half. You can tell his decision making leaves a lot to be
Yeah.
desired, though, and I think for the time being, we'll probably only see him alongside Van Dijk in big
Yeah.
games. Van Dijk can talk him through a lot of
hmm
stuff, and without him there, he looked a little bit all at sea at
hmm
times. But like I say, he's got all the attributes. Yeah, performance-wise, it was okay. Second half was a hell of a lot better. And obviously there was one. Tyler Morton was very good. I know I've already mentioned him, but I'd like to mention him
Yeah.
again. He was brilliant. There was one moment that you probably want to talk about.
Yeah. The Thiago goal for me, I don't think I've ever seen a goal like that in my life, and I don't think we'll ever see a goal like that again. I mean, you never know with Thiago, but I genuinely can't describe anything that happened with that goal because it just seems like it defied science to go in the way that it did.
You've just took the words right out of my
I'm
mouth.
sorry, but
Is
that's the way you make me explain.
that was almost like it was scripted between us. Right? One of us said that. Like I was going to say, it defied science. Yeah, it's extraordinary. A lot
Yeah,
of the most heated debate on Twitter this week has been whether it touched the ground or not. For
just
me,
cut the grass. Just cut the grass.
for
Groundsman didn't
me,
even
I'm
come
going
on
to say it
afterwards.
didn't, just because I like to think it didn't.
Mm.
But yeah, it's some strike.
Oh, it's unreal.
I think he's a joy to watch,
He
Thiago. I
is.
do. I think he's been a joy to watch since day one.
hmm
He needs to cut out these little mistakes he made on
Yeah.
yesterday as well. He got
hmm
caught on the ball a little bit, but he's so good. It's almost to his detriment
Yeah.
because he wants to play these absolutely just heavenly passes. And at times it's not quite on. And he wants
Yeah.
to play, to be fair to him, he's very ambitious with what he
hmm
wants to do on the ball. He wants to play the pass that cuts apart a midfield and it goes through two players of the opposition and the gap's not really there. That's the ball he's trying to play. And at times it goes wrong and it's a risky strategy. But Thiago, we haven't seen the best of him yet. I think we're just starting to right now.
hmm
And he could be a difference maker in this Liverpool side. But it's almost strange to say stuff like that because I think we all forget, he's played in some of the best teams in the footballing world in the past decade, like
Yeah.
Barcelona, Bayern Munich. They've dominated Europe, the teams he's been in, and he's
Yeah.
been a big part of them.
hmm
They've won everything. He's won nigh on everything, probably bar the Ballon d'Or as a
Yeah.
player himself. You know what I mean?
hmm
We've got a genuinely world-class footballer there who has the capabilities to make magic things happen. We just haven't seen it because of injuries. So hopefully there'll be a lot less injuries and a lot more moments like that sweet, sweet volley the other night.
I know. Well, that's a big thing for me as well. Is I don't think we've seen a player like him. I
We
think
haven't had a
in
player like him
football,
for a long time.
in the Premier League for our team, I don't think we have. But I think in the world
He
in general,
he's
in the
very
midfield
technically
spot,
gifted, isn't he? He's
no,
technically
he's
gifted, like.
unreal.
Yeah, he is. He is. I
And I
mean,
think
Xabi
even
Alonso
yeah,
comes close in many
mhm,
ways because technically, passing wise, passing
yeah,
range, very similar. Um, but yeah, if Thiago can start adding goals to his games, like he's got
yeah,
2 and 2, that's even better. But Liverpool certainly in recent memory, like we had that industrious midfield, didn't we?
yeah,
The people called it the Brexit midfield of Wijnaldum, Milner, and Henderson, which
yeah,
did a job. It was
mhm,
functional. It allowed other parts of the team to flow. But now we've got this absolute master in Thiago, who is just phenomenal. And if
mhm,
we can keep him fit and on the field, the thing is, we need Henderson alongside him to do a lot of his running
yeah,
and Fabinho to do his defensive stuff,
mhm,
and we're laughing. And
yeah.
that's what we've got right now. So let's keep it like that.
Well, that goal helped us to continue our unbeaten streak in the Champions League. One more game left to go against Milan. Where do you think we're going to go in this competition? Because everyone labelled this group the group of death. They looked at the City group and thought, right, well, there's two people that are going to go through from this, but everyone looked at our group, and I think including most Liverpool fans as well as myself, looked at this group and thought, God, this is going to be tough because every single game is a tough game, and especially considering the title charge that we want to go on as well in
Yeah.
the league. having games like that in the midweek doesn't really help, but we've coped with it extraordinarily. So where do you think this Liverpool side is going to go in the Champions League this season?
What are we, 10 points clear in the group of death?
I
Scary
believe
that.
so, yeah.
Scary that.
It is.
You know what? We are almost better equipped for a Champions League run than we are a Premier League run, because we've already spoke about the goals we've got in the side and the threat we can pose to any side in world football. So, and the years we've gone far in the Champions League under Klopp, we were blowing teams away, particularly at Anfield. I remember the Roma game in particular, and City as well. So, yeah, we are better equipped, in my opinion, to go really far in this Champions League because we can just hurt teams. We can kill off the Champions League tie, the point I'm making. We can kill off the Champions League tie in half an hour if we really want to, you know what I mean? And we've done it under Klopp. We've done it a few times. And this side right now looks like it's capable of doing it again. So I think we can go all the way. There's no reason why not, you know what I mean? Like, with the goals we've got, with Salah, the way he's playing, with Van Dijk back fully fit, I do think we have to strike that balance. But I think that's more of a Premier League balance to be found. You can't just outscore every Premier League team every week. It doesn't work. We've seen that with Brentford. But in one-off sort of knockout games, particularly at Anfield, particularly on European nights, you can just kill teams in half an hour, and that's the end of the tie. You know what I mean? So, yeah, we can go all the way.
I'd like to think so. I think the quadruple's still on, isn't it? So there's a bit of hope there.
Well, domestic cups in Liverpool,
exactly. Well, Klopp loves the Carabao Cup. He absolutely adores it. I'm sure he wants on his trophy cabinet somewhere. But with that midweek game as well, and now looking ahead to the Merseyside derby, what sort of lineup do you think we're going to see on Wednesday? I think for me, the big thing is I think Christmas, I think derby, I think that game where Klopp just decided to pull out every single person that had been sat on the bench for the entire season, said, you know what, go and have a game and go win us it. Do you think, especially because in the lineup we put up on the weekend as well, can we see quite a few changes coming this week?
You could essentially name two teams for this. You can name the team that everyone thinks Klopp will and should play. And then you can name Jurgen Klopp's derby special because he names some mad teams in these derbies. Like, I was at that game you allude to, you know, Shaqiri and Origi, and I think Lallana played out of absolutely nowhere. They've not even been close. And you think, oh, it's a derby, bound to be full strength, bound to be. And then them two play, and we just destroy them. It's the most bizarre thing. And he's got a knack of doing it. I don't know whether he wants to surprise us, Everton. I don't know what it is.
Christmas present, probably.
It's honestly, it's bizarre. It's almost as if, and obviously we beat them in the FA Cup, and he really did play the kids. And it's almost as if he gets a kick out of not only beating Everton, but beating Everton by playing mad teams. You know what I mean? It certainly gives it a bit more pleasure for us as fans when he does do that. But it's almost like he's showing off in a way. But as for Wednesday, I wouldn't show off if I was him. I would go the same team that started yesterday with Matip coming in for Kanate, which would be Alisson, Trent, Matip, Van Dijk, Robertson. About 4 days ago, I was team Tsimikas on the left back issue because I think Robertson fell below. That's all changed. I thought he was brilliant. And then Fabinho, Thiago Henderson, best midfield we own, in my opinion, regardless of fitness. I think that's the best midfield three. And then obviously Salah, Jota, and Mane. That would have changed were Firmino available, despite Jota's 2 goals. I just think Firmino is still part of our best line. I think if there's a Champions League tomorrow, that old adage, and everyone was fit, Firmino would play. But there isn't, so that would be my team.
Well, I definitely think I'd agree with you. I think the big thing is what you've mentioned, especially today, is if we can take the game away from any team, and especially Everton, within the first half or within the first 60 minutes, then I think it's ideal then to bring on, you know, whoever we can. But the only issue is it is the derby, and it's always mental, and we can't really predict anything that's going to happen.
No. The thing with this derby in particular is, more so than most in recent memory, actually, is Everton have a real issue. Like, I can't remember many derbies. Maybe there's a Marco Silva one.
Yeah.
where they were not happy with their manager going
Mhm.
into the game. There was a Marco Silva one, definitely, actually. But
Mhm.
anyway, so if we do get in the ascendancy at Goodison,
Yeah.
because I think the Silva one was at Anfield, if we get in the ascendancy at Goodison, it could turn really quite
It
nasty
could,
for them.
definitely.
And that's not me being like, a smug red, because who knows
Mhm.
what's going to happen in the game. I actually fear the game for all the reasons I mentioned.
Same.
But there is the sort of possibility that, say we do go
Mhm.
2-0 up, for instance, that could turn. That could really turn there. And that makes things even more difficult from Everton perspective. Great
Yeah.
for us, then we could turn on the style and could really hurt them.
Yeah.
And that's a genuine sort of factor in this game, because if we
Mhm.
do get a fast start like we did yesterday, I think we could see some bad scenes there in terms of the fan sort of. They turned on them today, bad looks of it, after the game
Yeah.
at Brentford. Don't know if you've seen.
Mhm.
Um, and that could easily sort of get worse, be magnified. It's a derby. It's Rafa
Mhm.
Benitez.
Yeah.
It's at home. It's all there. All the ingredients there. If we happen to take the lead /2-0 lead, oof, dear.
I'm genuinely terrified for it, and I don't particularly want to think too much about it, because the thing is, as much as I want to try and predict it, or say, what's going to happen, or think about how we're going to perform, derbies, especially at Goodison, you know exactly how they turn out. It's always going to be a really tough game, and it'll probably end up a 0-0 draw or a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, our record there is bad.
Yeah,
Our record there is really poor recently.
but as long as everyone ends up back in the change rooms with all their ACLs intact, that's a win for
Yeah,
me.
good point,
Definitely
that.
a win
Yeah,
for
didn't
me.
think of that. Yeah.
I know. I think the big thing as well is the Christmas period of games starts with the Everton game. What are you looking for in this Christmas period? Because I always feel that it is a make or break period. I think last season, ironically, we went on an unreal Christmas period, but almost had a hangover from that in January, and that's when we really started to fall apart. So, what can you expect from us in the Christmas period, and what do you think Liverpool need to do in order to continue this pace and push for the title next year?
Yeah, I think things just caught up with us in the last year. I think
Yeah,
we were all kind of surprised how well we were playing, given what had happened.
yeah,
And I think it was always bound, in hindsight, it was always bound to hurt us eventually, and it did.
yeah,
As for this season, you're dead right, though, because I remember, again, going back to that under Klopp sort of thing, because this is when we've been a genuine force again,
yeah,
really. You look at these sort of clutches of fixtures, and I remember looking back at like a November or an October time
yeah.
and thinking, God, that's a tough month.
Hmm.
And all of a sudden, we come out of that month and we're either unbeaten, we've won them all,
Yeah.
something like that. So I look at this sort of set of fixtures in exactly the same way.
Hmm.
And Liverpool have, under Klopp, have had this knack of really powering through these periods and coming
Yeah.
out the other side glowing. So I hope we can do that again, because
Hmm.
you're dead right. For me, it's the most important part of the season, Christmas.
Yeah.
It's my favourite part of the season. I
Yeah.
absolutely love it. But yeah, sort of the momentum, and you can find yourself. Well, I think we're 1 point behind Chelsea now after today.
Yeah.
We could find ourselves, by the time we play them on the 2nd of January, I think it is, we could find ourselves 1 or 2 points ahead of them, because there's
Hmm.
that many games, if not more, that many games coming up. A good Christmas can really make or break your season. And like I say, we do have a happy habit of looking at a group of fixtures, and I don't think our fixtures individually are particularly tested. I know we
No.
played Villa and
Yeah.
Wolves, difficult enough games. Leicester a
Hmm.
couple of times. Newcastle, who knows? But yeah, if we just take those fixtures sort of as they are and as lone fixtures, which Klopp is very good at,
Yeah.
then there's no reason why we can't, go unbeaten sort of
Hmm.
as a minimum, which would be outstanding if we manage to do that, because chances are we're going to pick up more wins than not. Rotation will be key. Rotation will be really important. Getting rest when possible will be key. But yeah, we've got the squad, we've got the mentality. There's absolutely no reason why we can't. And if we do, because you can almost guarantee that City and Chelsea won't.
Hmm.
And I know that's a strong thing to say, but I stand by it, because I don't think they're as swashbuckling and as all
Yeah.
conquering as people have
Hmm.
suggested. So if we can, it's almost like you look at all three of these teams now,
Yeah.
and you could say, if one of them comes through this, 6-week period, if you like, unbeaten,
Yeah.
there's your favourites. So
Mhm.
there's no reason, and it should be us.
Well, let's hope it's a Merry Christmas for all Liverpool fans, and especially for the team as well. Now, the worst part of the show, I'd probably say, is going to predict what your result
I
is
thought you
for
were going to avoid this.
I tried to, but I feel like we just need to, So, what are your predictions for the derby in the next few days, Dan?
I hate this. Honestly, I hate this game so much. I think every time this game comes around, I say it's my most hated.
Yeah.
And then the United game comes around and I say that's my most hated. I think that just swaps
Between
every
those
time.
two. Yeah.
Yeah, it just every time we're playing one of them, that
Mhm.
for that week is my most hated fixture. Oh, God. Listen, there's no doubt about it. Like I said earlier on, we're in a much better place than they are right now for lots of reasons. Form on the pitch, managerially, etc., etc. Supporters, we're in a happier place than they are. There's no getting around that. So for that reason, I will be positive, and I will say. See, I'm half tempted now to say it'll turn really toxic there, and we'll take that 2-0 lead and we'll just go and riot. But I'll be sensible and I'll say 2-0, with Mane and Salah getting the goals because they didn't score on the weekend, which was just a shock.
It was mental, but I'm gonna go for a 1-1. A bit negative, but
a bit.
Sorry, no. Well, it is, but at the same time,
I mean, I hate the game, and I get where you're coming from.
I do.
But
I'm terrified. Especially considering last season's fixture at Goodison Park. My VAR sort of.
Oh, that was bad.
VAR interventions, dodgy calls. I'm expecting a bit of that. I think the kinder side to me says the same as you, but I think thinking the fact that it is the derby and the state that Everton are in the moment, and it's Rafa as well. I think
he might not be there. He might not be there by then.
I'm under the illusion that Rafa's going to be there. He might not be afterward, but I feel like he might just about get there.
It would be weird, like all jokes aside, if it was us that sort of nailed in the coffin for him, wouldn't it? That'd be sort of not poetic, but it would be a strange turn of events, all things considered. Like,
but if it's the other way around, then what's that say for us? If our
that's the worst case scenario.
That is the big worry.
If he can get a win to sort of save his job against us, that'd be rough.
Well, hopefully we're celebrating next week, and hopefully we're back on air next week. That's the main thing. Not hiding under any tables or anything. But thank you for this evening, Dan, and thank you all for tuning in and joining us to talk about this. We'll see you next week, hopefully with a good number of points on the board, and hopefully top of the table too. Thank you very much again, Dan, and we'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody.